Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ethereum Wet and Wild. Hot and Spicy, where today we're going to talk about some of today's hot topics. As always, we try to stay on the latest news. Last time it was governance because that was, crypto Twitter's latest stuff. And today we're going to talk about the latest kind of crypto Twitter shenanigans, which is these personal tokens, which seem to be somewhat divisive. So as usual on today's call, it is myself, Mr. Kames, all-around Ethereum developer, and Mr. Billy Ludke with his awesome new podcast setup. What's going on, Billy?
I dug deep under my mess of a bed and uncovered my old microphone. So we're testing that out today, testing out the real mic setup, the real headphone setup. Kames apparently says that I sound worse than normal, so
I wouldn't say worse, just different. I gotta get used to
different. Yeah, so maybe we'll switch back next time, but we'll see how this goes. Who knows? Could be good.
It's definitely gonna be good, and if anything, we fine tune it in. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Let's talk about, I think, a little bit what social tokens are, and then we can maybe get a little bit into like the history and the mechanics and what's going on. So as if you've been in the Ethereum space, tokens are the hotness. That's pretty much what drives a lot of Ethereum adoption and mechanics and token theory and the spicy hot word, crypto economics. There was this ICO boom a couple of years ago where tokens were launched by companies, yada, 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 very interesting stuff. But what is emerging now is people are tokenizing themselves, and whether that's also selling those tokens for future gains or just using them as an experiment to get your time. There seems to be a couple of variations, but it seems like this new twist kind of on what was ICOs, but now people are issuing their own social tokens for a couple of different dynamics. And I'd love to dive in, but Billy, what kind of, do you want to add anything to that and your perspective on what's going on with these social tokens and kind of maybe a little background from your perspective?
Yeah, no, that was good. And generally, I think for people who are just completely unfamiliar, as Kames said, the realm of social tokens can be defined as there's really like Kames said, there's two patterns that are emerging. People are either kind of tokenizing their personal revenue generation. So you could say all right, if you buy stake in me, you get X percentage of my future gains moving forward. That's one option. Another one is your time. So you can say, hey, if you buy some of my tokens, you can exchange those tokens back to me for a 30-minute meeting, or I'll do a code review for you. There's also you can get super creative with that stuff. I think we've yet to see a lot of the really cool applications and use cases for this stuff, because basically it's just you just create your own currency that you're willing to accept for any arbitrary purpose. And I think it's going to get spicy because as these things get actual value, I don't know how enforceable they're going to be. It's going to come down to that individual person's reputation. They're basically staking their reputation and saying, I will actually uphold my promise to you that I will, hold this meeting with you or whatever. But yeah, I think it's going to be generally interesting what happens with this space, and I feel and James, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel the recent social token boom has resulted from mainly the Uniswap fork that allows you to easily exchange social tokens. I feel before that it was just a general concept that people were playing around with, but now that there's an easy way to exchange these things, it seems everyone and their mother has a social token now, and they're just kind of exploding. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before diving into just the tech and why they're kind of gaining popularity, I just want to mention with social tokens, you mentioned this lack of enforceability. But I just want to point out that that's nothing really new. Tokens haven't really been enforceable from day one. When you bought into an ICO, there was no promise that team would actually deliver kind of what they promised. And some of them didn't even have any code ready. So I think it should be pointed out that that's always kind of been the case. But for some reason, people are really hooking onto that with social tokens. Oh, they're not enforceable. Well, hot and spicy take, they were never really enforceable. So nothing new there, I think we should point out. But then onto your case of like why they're coming to be nowadays. I think there's a couple of reasons, and I actually haven't used this fork of Uniswap, and it sounds like you know a little bit more than me. But I'd also like to point out there's this company Roll, and I believe their website is like tryroll.com, where currently they're in alpha mode, so you can have to request to be able to issue a token. But I actually recently requested, and I have my own social token. I haven't done a raise, or I'm not selling any yet. But what you do is you can sign up, and they'll kind of like automate minting an ERC20, and they don't actually give you the whole supply up front, right? They'll give you, I think, like 20% of like 20 million, and then like every couple of weeks they'll like give you more tokens. So I think in a combination with a few of those, just like not needing technical chops to launch your token, in addition to like a nice pretty UI and like kind of cementing this use case, that has allowed people who have otherwise not been able to. So I think in a combination with Try-Roll and a few others, and I think there's Me Token now by the people over at Raid Guild, and they are, even if you go to like the ENS app website, they're actually promoted as, you know, one of the apps using them. But do you want to explain a little bit more of this Uniswap fork? Because I'm actually not really familiar with it, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and just like what's that doing?
Have not looked into it too much at all, so I don't have too many details. But it is basically just that. I think it's like think about if you have this ecosystem of social tokens, they don't exist on any exchange, and so like it's kind of hard to you have to kind of just like manually give them to people when you create them. But if you have this kind of interface or layer where it's like easy to exchange that social token for any other ERC20, that like it makes it feel like more of a token and less of just like this weird thing that you just created, I guess. And I think we're going to see like with the emergence of these neutral kind of decentralized DeFi protocols where the barrier to entry for tokens operating within those protocols is extremely low. So like you don't have to pay Binance $100,000 to get your token listed on the exchange. I think we're going to see the emergence of like many new asset types and classes because it'll be easy for people to create them and get them listed on exchanges and get them like kind of flowing throughout the ecosystem, if that kind of makes any sense.
Yep, totally. Just making it easier to participate in this game that we're creating. On that topic, Billy, let me ask you, are you a holder of any social tokens? Have you used any social tokens yet?
No, we got those Johnny Dubowski tokens, but
Hey!
that's actually a cool story. Do you want to go into that a little bit? Because I feel like that was like one of the first social token use cases probably ever, and I feel like it's a pretty cool one.
Well, okay, that's a bold claim. I don't want to say ever, but yeah, let's definitely add a little bit of background. So we had a very like motivated member when, you know, me and Billy were both on the same team doing 1 million devs, no longer, but hey, whatever, things happen. Still love, Papa bless, Joe Lubin, you're the greatest. But during that time, we had a very energistic guy named Johnny Dubowski, and he had a lot of great ideas, and he was participating a lot, and ETH Denver was rolling around. And, you know, he was really trying to figure out how to get away to ETH Denver, and he didn't have a ticket, and, you know, times were a little tough. He didn't have the money to buy a plane ticket. It was a lot of money to, you know, $1,000 to go, a hotel or whatnot. So me and Billy actually were like, all right, we'll cut you a deal. Me and Billy will each pay 50-50 on $1,000 of DAI. And in exchange, we want a personal token. Like, so go ahead, Johnny, please mint a personal token, and then tell us like your hourly rate. And that's what he did. And so what ended up happening is me and Billy, we got a multi-sig wallet up and running, and it was kind of like the 1 million devs multi-sig. And we each deposited 500 DAI, if I remember correctly. And then we sent that to Johnny, and he sent us back his personal tokens. And I actually tweeted him last week to be like, yo, dude, let's use some of these social tokens and do a music show or something, or live stream. He never got back to me, so we're going to have to hit him back up. You know, crank that wrench a little bit. Spicy. Come on, Johnny. But yeah, so I think in that case, it was quite interesting. We basically invested into this person and said, we love your energy. We love your ideas. We want to see you come to ETH Denver. Let's do a little exchange. And we now own, I think they're called Bootstrap tokens, which is a pretty good name.
Yeah, and I think I think social tokens are generally going to be kind of a useful tool in the arsenal of this kind of composable workforce. So you kind of, on one side of the equation, you have bounties. So like anyone can go and attach themselves to a bounty, but like on the other side of the equation, you can now basically, it's a much more easily divisible way to allocate your time to projects. It's like, hey, project X, I'm going to give you 5 of my tokens, and you guys can use these tokens however you want to get, let's say, each token, it represents 1 hour of my time. So you have 5 hours of my time to use however you want to spend it. And so I think like it opens this world of, I don't know, like the workforce becomes more of a marketplace. You can more easily buy and exchange people's time, which I think it opens up the possibilities for something that we internal to consensus had been talking about for a long time. And I don't want to dive down too deep down this rabbit hole, because like that's a whole nother topic. But this idea of dissolving the boundaries between companies and just having like this composable workforce and this end-sided marketplace where people and teams just kind of are fluidly exchanging their time to one another. And companies don't really look like companies anymore. They're like teams that can, like, the consensus marketing team doesn't just have to serve consensus. The consensus marketing team can then serve any company in the industry if people pay them enough. And then you just have this like much more fluid ecosystem of workers and builders. But yeah, that's a rabbit hole for another time.
Well, yeah, and I think we could touch on that a little bit, because I think it's quite interesting when you start to think about a company, especially as large as Consensus, when there's a lot of, especially the way it's structured, right? It's not just one company. It's like a parent company, and there's a lot of like sub teams on that. And, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And, legal got a lot of requests, and it's a small team, and marketing got a lot of requests. And it's like, how can you make a market-based economy where it's like, maybe I'm a holder of, these most legal tokens because I've collected them and I've added value to this organization, and I want to redeem that, and I put myself ahead of line. So I don't think we're quite there yet, but there's definitely a lot of interest, like a mini economy, and maybe that'll work in a lot of these distributed teams. But yeah, so let's not spend too much time in that rabbit hole. But I asked the question if you owned any, because myself, I actually own 4 different tokens, social tokens. One that me and you share, which is the Johnny Dabuski token. And then I have the OG Alex Mashmez tokens before he actually launched his personal ICO token. He actually hooked me up with some. And then I have the Dan Finley token, which doesn't have a purpose yet, where I should mention the first 2 are kind of like traded for a time, where Dan Finley's is called Dank Coin, and he sent me 1,000 Dank. And, he's been a strong advocate. And I remember as long as like 2 years ago when we were at the Portugal retreat, he was thinking about this and social credit and how do you do that. So I'm excited to see where Dan goes. But then the 4th one I have is the Pew token by Amin, which was basically gave me the right to trade this token for a tweet. And I actually ended up buying this for about $60 at the time. And it's now actually gone up in value, which is quite interesting. I got a return of 30%. It's somewhere hovering on like $90 on Uniswap. So I may sell it or use it at some point. But it's just interesting. I wanted to point out that there are these different use cases where it's like very generic for someone's time, where it's just like, hey, just give me an hour of your time, or very specific service where it's like, I have a large following. I think Amin has somewhere of like 14,000 people. And it's like, you can retweet me for 1 social token. And so it's just interesting to see how people are experimenting with these and what they could use them for. And on that note, what do you think, Billy? Should I keep my Pew token? Should I sell it for a profit? Should I get a meme to do something spicy with it? What do you think I should do with that Pew token?
I can think of a million spicy things that you can do with that token. So I would personally hold on to that one.
All right. I think you're right. I think I probably will hold on to that. Even if I never use it, it's just like I was one of the OGs who bought one of the original social tokens. It had a pretty good use case. I won't go into it because it's a little bit of a personal matter. But yeah, I liked what the funding of it was going towards and why it was useful.
The topic of followers is really interesting, and maybe we talk about this a little bit. But I think social tokens really allow you to more easily monetize your social reputation and your following on all these different platforms without necessarily like completely selling out to institutions. So like right now, let's say you want to monetize your Instagram. Like the only way to do that is to post ads, and you get paid like per post, and that the amount that you get paid is based on the following that you have and the engagement that you have. Now you can like kind of monetize a bunch of different stuff You can monetize Twitter. You can monetize really anything. You can like as long as you are reputable for any specific thing. Like if you're a reputable coder or you're a reputable marketer or you're reputable, if you're good at anything, you can now like monetize that. And as long as people kind of trust you and know you, you have like much more value. So it almost, in a sense, encourages good like good social behavior because you're now monetarily incentivized to kind of get your name out there and to become more well known. And I think like previously there was kind of a very high minimum threshold that you had to hit to be able to monetize yourself. So like let's say Instagram, you need to get like 50,000 followers to start monetizing your account. Now you don't necessarily need that many. You can start monetizing your account without that many followers and like as you're building this reputation. So I think it's a really cool way to I don't know, you could be like an early adopter of a person, which I think is really cool. And I don't know, any thoughts on that general topic before we talk about something?
Well, yeah, I think the future of, say, like I'm a small channel now, and so I only have like 500 followers or something, but I believe highly that this person is charismatic, they've got good energy, and their social presence is going to grow to extreme amount. You can essentially go long on that person's charisma in a way. And like, you know, my social token for a meme has gone up in value, and I don't know why. It's probably some like mechanics in Uniswap as opposed to less of the demand. But it is interesting if like, you know, you can give some money to as a person to start, and then just with the hope and the promise that they are going to get bigger later, basically you can make some money off of them getting bigger later, and they get some capital to start with. And yeah, I think it totally would be interesting to really see some mechanics built around that. And that could be a great use case to really bring in Instagram influencers and other influencers and see where that goes.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's so one thing we talked about is the need for us to escape the Web3 echo chamber. And
Yep.
one way that we talked about doing that is to get people who are reputable or famous or influencers in like the non-Web3 world to start promoting Web3 stuff and Ethereum stuff. So there's that like one basketball player who did like a social token or whatever.
Yep.
Then all of that person's followers ultimately get exposed to Ethereum. So maybe this is one method where we can get like massive exposure to Ethereum and through social tokens. Like if every social media influencer is creating a social token and selling it, like that's how we get 1 million developers. That's how we get mass adoption.
Yeah, and I would say not even developers, more just users.
Totally, yeah.
Where it's just like it's a Trojan horse in a way. So it's kind of
have the shirt on.
Oh yeah, 1 million developers, baby. Yeah, I don't have mine today, but totally repping. Yeah, and I think, yeah, it just being able to bring people on board, and you know, I'd like to go back a little bit to who I think really kickstarted this, which was Alex Mezmez. And shout out, he's actually a 1 million dev steward, and he's got a ton of energy. He does marketing DAO. He's part of Meta Cartel. He's even doing Rocket NFT. But I feel like his push to make a token really kind of jumped that bridge from just the Ethereum crypto Twitter to a few outside of around. Because what ended up picking a news outlet that picked him up was like the Barstool, like a sports news network, and they had suddenly posted an article about him. And I don't know if that was in correlation to, you know, the athlete that you just mentioned, but I was so blown away to kind of see this completely non-blockchain, completely non-crypto Twitter talk about this person who I know and who I'm buddies with, basically doing like this token sale for $20,000 to raise money to go to San Francisco. And it seems like it really does have that potential to really cross the chasm, as they say. So I think totally in that regard, this could be one of those like, oh, wow, this is that thing that bridges that gap.
Yeah, and I think this is an example of something that we just generally have to design for, and it's products with product market fit. Like I think in the crypto industry, we've been and it had to happen at first. We've been building all of this like infrastructural tooling to allow Ethereum to be good and be kind of secure and private and scalable. And so the work we've been doing had to be done. But like now we're at the point where we kind of have a pretty stable base, even with just current layer 1 Ethereum. like not even taking into account like Ethereum 1.x scalability solutions. Like it's kind of good enough right now where we can build things with product market fit. And like as soon as we start building them, like now we have DeFi, and like a bunch of people are joining the space just to participate in DeFi. Now we have social tokens, getting exposure to groups of people who just were completely unfamiliar with Ethereum before getting exposed to that. So I think, yeah, that's going to be a big piece of adoption, is just building things that everyday people want to use. And then like they ultimately have to get exposed to Ethereum if they want to interact with those things. So
Yep. And it's got to be low friction at first. It's got to be very low friction, but fun and easy. Like I want to invest into this athlete I know, or this like top-notch developer that I know. And if you can make it a click of a button, like that's how we're going to win.
That's a good point that I want to hit on a little bit, is like roll. It doesn't seem, I haven't dug too deep, but it doesn't seem like they did anything like super special. It seems like we could have done that
in a couple of days.
in a couple of days a few years ago. But like nobody did it. And I don't know why nobody did it. And like no one just made like an easy create your own ERC20 generator with a nice UI and like a super good experience for people. And I think maybe like what we're seeing is the people who do that, like the interest in something like that, even if it's like a super simple use case, is pretty high. Like as long as you build anything with like a really easy UI UX, kind of every time I've seen that happen, people start to use it. So I don't think we need to come up with these like complicated advanced use cases to address. I think maybe we start with some of these like super simple, easy lifts and work our way to the more advanced things from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about product, right? You really got to build something people want. And if they don't want it and you bog them down with technical jargon, there's no story behind it. It's not emotionally compelling. There's nothing engaging about it. So I think totally just hitting a few of those buttons and wrapping tech in a beautiful and elegant way really is the way forward. And on that note, I want to ask this question is like, if like, let's say social tokens hit it and they're great, but what do you think about this use case of what Alex did where he raised $20,000 and, you invested in him? His backstory is he wants to move to San Francisco and just get a little bit more embedded in this tech space right now because, he's in London and just there's not much of that. But do you think there's this ability to make a platform explicitly for launching these personal stake tokens? Like, will there be a product like that? Because right now, this is the hot debate. Is somebody named Herman just launched his own token the other day, and he's only like issuing, 5%, and he's holding the other 95 or whatever it may be. But there seems to be, in some way, a small demand for this. Do you see that as a viable product of people raising anywhere from like $1,000 to $20,000, or he's even asking $30,000, or is that this kind of just like a one-off experiment and it may or may not work?
I think there is a product there, and I don't, if it's limited to like smaller amounts, I don't know if like how big that could be. I mean it seems like something somebody should do, but one use case that actually John Wolper pitched to me a few years ago was like this, I forget what he called it. It was like fan club or something. But it's basically like social tokens, but for like artists and sports players and stuff. And so like, let's say you see an up and coming artist, and you like really want to support them and you like want to invest in them. Like you can get royalties in them by buying their social token and like supporting them early on. And I think that's like a whole new asset class that's going to exist, is like, like these social tokens in in just people in general. Imagine just this marketplace where you can like buy and sell equity in people. You can have like people futures, you can have people derivatives, you can have like people back securities. I don't know. There's just it's just this whole new class of like asset and currency that can exist now, and I think there has to be a platform to support that. Whoever does it first is gonna have something awesome. So short answer, I guess, yes.
Totally, yes. Someone's going to do it. There seems to be a demand now. We're getting mature enough. The only thing that makes me nervous is really these unintended side effects. Because, as I was on crypto Twitter today, kind of just staying up to date on all the news. And, this guy who's launching his social token, Herman, got put on blast. Like this guy from DeFi Prime was like, all right, he's gone public. He's put himself out there. But he basically said, I had an agreement with Herman. He was supposed to write an article for DeFi Prime. We had an agreement. He didn't do it. Then he came back to renegotiate prices, didn't do it. And then he came back to renegotiate terms and just like did not live up to his promise. And so I don't know the guy, so I can't, say either way. But it seems like if you're going to expose yourself, there's going to be some heated debates. And like, I don't know how we handle those unintended consequences, because it seems like this may bring even more spice than Ethereum hot and spicy. And like people are just going to go on blast. So that's the only part that gets me a little bit nervous, is like, if you put yourself out there, be prepared to have your skeletons basically brought up. And since, everyone has skeletons, it's like, are you ready to deal with those? And can you be a politician enough, I guess, in a way to deal with that? So I'm not sure how we do that, but that's the one part that makes me a little nervous. But maybe do you want to comment on that, or do you see any other like unintended consequences or side effects that may come from these tokens, or like, anything good or bad that you think maybe the community isn't thinking about right now?
I think hitting on the same point, but like the counter argument to that is it kind of enforces people to act in a good way. Like in order for them to retain the value of their personal social token, they kind of they're encouraged to one, like continue building their reputation to increase the monetary value of that token, and then two, like make sure that they're following through on their actions and being reliable and responsible and just like generally delivering. Otherwise, they're going to be, like you said, they're going to get massively put on blast, and you basically now there's going to be like explicit reputation that emerges from this. Like you're going to have like an Amazon star rating. Like people are going to be rated like 1 star because they just like don't follow through on their promises. So I think generally it's going to incentivize people to act in a good way. And then two, it's going to do a lot of good in weeding out people who just generally aren't that good, for lack of better words.
Yep. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like you are incentivized to be a better person this way. You really like put yourself in that corner. And I remember that was the feeling that I had when I promised, because MetaMask basically, they put out a survey and, I wanted to incentivize other developers to participate in the survey. So I said, hey, I'll give you, I think it was 1,000 Kames token if you go fill out the survey and send me a screenshot. And I was like, man, I really got to follow through on this because I'm attaching my name to it and people are going to hit me up to basically say, hey, I want an hour of your time now. And I was like, this puts me in a bind. Like I'm giving away 6 hours of free time. And I was like, if I don't follow through on that, I'm going to look like a dick. And, I'm someone who loves to do a lot of projects and I'm constantly like just trying new things and experimenting. And I was like, man, I really don't hope in 2 months I regret this, but it made me feel that like I have to follow through. I put my name on it now. I have to be this person. And I have to act this way. And so I kind of like that because it refined myself or made me basically take a hard look at that. Like, all right, I'm making this promise, deliver to it. Where like sometimes in the past, I have not done that just because I love experimenting all the time. But I have to say it was a good feeling to know that like, all right, and someone did come and claim it. And like, I was like, all right, I'll spend some time. And I spent a weekend kind of looking through their project and, just giving some very minor feedback. But, that feeling of being accountable, definitely it strikes you. I'm glad it didn't attach any money because that's a way different ball game. But I do hope that gets encouraged a little bit more because it would be cool to see that accountability.
Yeah. And I feel like this is cool because as opposed to, let's say you're working for a company and the equity at stake if you are a bad actor is like the stock of that company. You're like 1 degree removed from that personally. So it's like, I don't have to like do my best in this capacity because, it's just the company that's going to fail. And I could just like move to another company. Whereas this, it's you on the line. It's your reputation on the line. The only person that you're going to hurt by not following through is yourself. And so I think that just kind of like that, if we can build, I'm just like envisioning this like marketplace of social tokens, and that's how like a workforce is composed. if that's how we're composing the workforce, like through these individual personal social tokens as opposed to like stock in companies, I feel like every individual actor in that system becomes like much more efficient and effective because everyone's trying to retain their personal brand. Um, I don't know. I think that might be like an unintended but very cool consequence of this.
Yeah, and I think on that note, we should just mention that there does seem to be a team that's kind of somewhat starting to facilitate this, and it's the Me Token, like where they are building a marketplace, and you can go and look at people's rep and like what they're doing. So if you haven't looked into it, you should definitely check out the Me Token. I'm trying to pull up their link right now, but it was the Meta Cartel people and then the Raid Guild. So I'm excited to see kind of where they take it and if they're going to build out some of these features and what the demand is. Because, yeah, I think if you have a really good interface that allows you to just see that rep, allowed you to see what's going on, there is a lot of potential there. But, you know, like you said earlier, you have to have a good product and you have to have something people are going to want and that's easy to use and people come to.
I think that's actually a really good first arena for this to be used is Metacartel and like the Raid Guild because like for people who aren't familiar, I just kind of want to walk through like maybe what working in Web3 through the Raid Guild might look like. Let's say you want to work in the Ethereum space and work on some Ethereum projects, but you are not full-time employed by some company in the space. What you could ultimately do is you could like join the Raid Guild and like attribute some percentage of your time to working on Raid Guild projects. And like what we're actually working on right now, and I don't want to show this because it's still like under wraps and stuff, but it's called Project Excalibur. But it's basically like a method by which we can feed funded projects to the Raid Guild for those people for all the different guilds to bid to work on those things. So you as an individual contributor can like join a guild and like get assigned paid work to do. And I'm just envisioning with these social tokens, I think like the way that you would assign yourself to a project is by like giving that project some of your own individual social tokens, which ultimately could represent like a portion of your time. What did you pull up here, Kames?
So this is the Me Token or the stake on me, and I'm kind of I went to the data talking about kind of reflecting some of the things you're saying, where you can basically buy these tokens and the supply and demand side, and it looks like they're using a bonding curve to kind of incentivize buying that at the right time and whatnot. So yeah, just brought up a little bit of information so people know kind of where to go.
Awesome, this is cool.
Yep. Cool. Well, I want to get a little bit into the hot and spicy takes about this because, you know, one thing that ticks me off a little bit, and I feel like, you know, in Ethereum and in this crypto space, maybe it's a little bit of a strong word, but I feel like we have a little bit of a God complex where it's like we just think we're just doing the hottest shit and everyone's looking at us. And I think, you know, this is highlighted and people are like, oh my God, you're launching a security. Like the SEC is going to come after you. And like, you know, your $20,000 raise, it's attracting government attention. I personally feel like that's a little overblown and it's like, calm down guys. We're just like experimenting with like selling tokens for, you know, some basic money for you to go to San Francisco. So I personally think that's a little too much, but I think that does bring up some good questions of like the legality of these and like what that looks like. Do you think there's going to be kind of a marketplace for discovering what this legalness is? Is this ever going to be considered a security, or will like this just like people having fun? And if it's under like, I don't know, $10 million, like you're probably good guys, or kind of what's your thoughts on that since I just exclaimed mine?
That's a hard question to answer. I don't know what the legality of all this is. Like you said, I'm in agreement with you. I think that as long as the dollar amounts involved remain relatively low, the SEC is probably not going to come in. Like they don't care about.
Yeah, let's be real, guys.
Yeah, and I think that's a general kind of thought. Like you said, like it's like this God complex or whatever. I don't know if that's like what it is, but it's like we overthink a lot of these things. Sure, you want to remain kind of regulatory compliant. You definitely want to make sure you're not breaking any laws, but I think we overthink a lot of this stuff, and we go down these rabbit holes that we don't need to go down at the onset when we're just experimenting. So people dove down the privacy rabbit hole for enterprises. Like,
Yep.
they're like, oh, we can't do anything without privacy. And I can think of 100 different use cases that you can implement at an enterprise without any privacy. So we didn't need like pairwise DIDs and Shamir secret sharing and like all this other crazy like ZK snark stuff just to do like some basic enterprise use cases. Like we got to stop overthinking, and you got to take the try roll approach and, and just like do the simplest shit. Let people create their own ERC20 and put a nice user interface on it. Boom, product done. We don't need like this crazy like I don't know what to call it, but yeah, I don't know.
Overcomplicating the simple.
Exactly. We just overcomplicate everything. But yeah, I think as long as the dollar amount involved remains relatively low, it will be okay. But I think this is a good enough use case to the point where the dollar amounts involved will get pretty high pretty quick. I could see like in a year or two those dollar amounts getting pretty big, especially if we start seeing celebrities tokenizing themselves and stuff like that. So then we enter some like weird regulatory ground, and I don't really know what to make of that. I am no lawyer and I don't know anything.
Yep. Shout out Vlad Zamfir for always bringing us down rabbit holes. So, I think a trend that commonly happens in Ethereum and a lot of cryptocurrencies is, we move rather quickly. Like 1 week it's one topic and the next is other. And I think that's a lot of just like trying to find product market fit, right? Like Bitcoin moved from electronic cash to now it's like electronic gold, and maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And Ethereum originally started with like, we're the world's global computer, and now it's like moving a little bit more to DeFi, and people are finding product fit, so no problem there. But this does a little bit feel like this is just this week's hot topic, and us in this bubble, it's like, okay, this is what we're going to talk about now, and like we're making a podcast of it because like it's today's hot news. But on that note, like, do you think this trend has some staying power? Are we going to continue to see kind of new role type companies and a few more? And is there going to be a big company that tries to sell these to celebrities in like 6 months? Or is this going to like peter out and we're going to find something new? So essentially, like, what do you think the staying power of this current trend will be for social tokens? Is the time right? Or is this like, Alex Majmez did a raise and it's just like the talk of the town for a couple of weeks?
I think it's the talk of the town for a couple of weeks, but generally it's a really good use case, and I think eventually it will get legs. I just think that it's generally overhyped for where we are right now, and I think we're seeing like the hype. We're at like the peak of the hype cycle right now. Yep. I think it's gonna fall off drastically in like the next few weeks, but then like ultimately from those ashes is gonna emerge some company who does it right and they target the right people, and then influencers and celebrities and artists, they're all going to start tokenizing themselves. And once that happens, like this will come back in full force. They'll probably do some legal work and like flesh out the regulatory kinks in all of this and be regulatory compliant. And once that happens, I think, yeah, I don't think this is just a fad. I think it's a fad right now. Definitely overhyped right now. People are going to stop creating their own. Not everyone and their mother is going to keep creating their own social tokens. But it does have value and it does have merit. And I say like, I'll say like, this is just completely subjective and just not based on any fact at all. I'm just going to take a guess. I'm going to say
it. Ethereum hot and spicy, baby.
I'm going to say like 1.5 to 2 years, we might like start to see this resurface in a serious capacity. Right now, it seems like very not serious. It seems like we're just all having fun and experimenting, and yeah, it's great. Like, let's not curb any of that enthusiasm. I just think that there's a lot of really cool stuff coming through the pipeline right now. This is just as you said, it's the talk of the town right now, and that. Everything, things just come and go in waves. We got too much cool shit going on. Can't talk about it all constantly. So, yeah, I'm gonna say this will come back in like 1 to 2 years or something like that.
I like it. Very reasonable, Billy. Very reasonable. Good take. I have a somewhat similar kind of like take on it, but perhaps a little bit different. And I think this goes back to my pinned tweet on Twitter, where it really talks about needing more experienced architects. I think what Ethereum really lacks is the product people. For so long, we've been devs talking to devs. And I think, this goes to your point that you made is like, we've had ERC20s for several years now, but it took Roll to make like a relatively simple UI and slap on the social token. And suddenly it's created somewhat of a market for the people in our bubble to kind of do that. But it doesn't feel like people outside of Ethereum are seeing that feature and being like, oh, I can go productize it. And I would really, really love if a company who's not crypto native and who isn't in this space see this one small potential and be like, oh, I can go make $10 billion because I'm going to go make social tokens for the Kim Kardashians and the Kanye West. And I'm going to go market to them. And I'm not going to market to, Dan Finley at MetaMask and like create a product for him, but these real social influencers. And, my hope is someone like that will come in, see the potential, find this very specific feature and make that. And then I think that's what it's going to take to get out of this crypto bubble is we need those experienced architects.
I think you're totally right. And I think that we're just now getting to the point where infrastructurally Ethereum is ready for that kind of traffic. Like if you tokenize Kim Kardashian, you'd have like millions of transactions, and like we can't handle that shit right now. And so like we need to focus on like the lower level tech for a very long time and not focus on these like user facing use cases and the productization of things, because we have to get like scalability and stuff before like we can actually get mainstream adoption. And I know I said the opposite at the beginning, like layer one is already ready for some of this stuff. It's ready for some of this stuff, but it's not ready for mainstream yet by any means. Like we just saw the synthetics. I don't want to go down this. Another thing we should probably talk about, but like
I know I saw your tweet. I'm gonna do it today.
Do it. It's cool. Synthetics, layer 2 exchange. They're using optimistic rollups to do like just extremely scalable and fast decentralized exchange. Like that's what we need, and now we have it. And now we can start to. I think now that we have that, some company is gonna come along, and they are gonna do exactly what you said. They're gonna make billions of dollars, and that's how we go mainstream. So
all right. So if there's any VC looking or anybody who wants to throw a ton of dollars at me and Billy, we have the idea, we have the skills. We'll build you the Kim Kardashian social token thing, and we'll hit up Nick Dotson, who does optimistic rollups, and we'll create the side chain. And we got you, fam. Let us know, or we'll get you the tech. Because, like you said,
give you a price tag.
we'll give you a price tag. We'll give you the spec. We'll give you everything.
We'll take 95% of the equity. No,
maybe 96. Maybe 96.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like we could easily do that if we wanted to. So yeah, VCs, come to us if you are trying to throw money at anyone.
But I mean, on a serious note, like I think to that point is like Ethereum does have that tech right now. Like you said, we've been working on infrastructure for so long, but we do have optimistic rollups now. We do have like people who know how to build UIs around Ethereum. Like for a long time, we just didn't have that. And so I think it is ready. So, if there is anybody listening to Ethereum Hot and Spicy, like we are ready for you. You can now start building these apps that have like a potential of a mainstream capabilities. I don't know about like Kim Kardashian levels, but maybe, I don't know, some C-list celebrity or some D-list celebrity who can really...
Yeah, we're at like C-list level right now. C-list levels of readiness.
Yep. We'll let you know. We'll let you know when we're Joe Rogan ready. That'll be like the scalability levels.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another good point. Is it's not just like scalability that's ready; it's like user experience that's ready. And I think that a lot of people, for some reason, and I did a tweet about this, and it was my pinned one for a while, but it's like, people were expecting, I don't know why they're expecting so much of us. Like Ethereum has only existed for like 6 years. And in 6 years, we've gone from like literally nothing, like not even an idea, to being a major staple conversation piece amongst like pretty important people and institutions in the world. And you gotta give us we gotta have a little bit of patience. I know that there's like battles going on for who's gonna be layer one and all this other stuff. Like people are competing for market share, whatever. So we have to move fast, but and the world's collapsing, so we also have to kind of move fast with respect to that, and financial systems going under. So maybe now is the time to capitalize on it and like really expedite our efforts. But generally, if it wasn't for the collapse of the world, I would say, give us some time. These things are naturally going to emerge. We're going to get better UI, UX. We're going to get better design patterns. We're going to get better scalability and privacy. They can't get worse. Like, as time goes on, it can't get worse. And so 6 years in, we're pretty damn far already. I don't know. Another 6 years, I can't even imagine where we're going to be. So, yeah, man, I just think we're already, as you said, we're already nearing the point where we're almost ready for mainstream adoption in that short amount of time, and it's pretty damn impressive. So, like, good job, Ethereum people. Like, pat yourselves on the back because we've done a lot.
Round of applause. Thank you, Vitalik, Joe Lubin, all of you, Ethereum core devs, all 1,000 of you, whoever you are. You've done an amazing job. Cool, man. Well, I think we touched a lot. Like, is there anything else that we want to part with our viewers about social tokens and anything that they should look at? Even though I feel like we've done a pretty comprehensive deep dive. But any final Ethereum hot and spicy takes to wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, I guess my spicy take is a lot of this stuff doesn't. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It doesn't click until you actually go and do it. So I highly encourage people to go and create your own social token. Come up with some creative use case that for some creative way that people can redeem your social token. Maybe, I don't know, they can go and get coffee with you, or if you're like a good video game player, like someone can come and join your party in the video game. I don't know. I literally haven't thought about this at all. There's probably a lot of cool stuff you can sell social tokens for. So just make one, start selling to people. Let's see what happens. Why not? Like, I think it's at least worth exploring a little bit. That's my spicy take. You got one, Kate?
Yep. Definitely worth exploring. Go hit up Tribal, ask for features. I feel like they're pushing it the most. Let's make it happen, or else someone take it. My Ethereum hot take is, Johnny, if you're listening, you better let us redeem our bootstrap funds, because I want to see an 8-hour live stream of music, and we paid good money for those, baby. So
maybe we split it up. 8 hours is like a pretty long time.
All right, we'll have
separate sessions.
Fair enough. We'll have 2 or 3 concerts, and let's raise some money for something good, whether it's COVID or something. But we'll pay Johnny to put on a concert, and Johnny, let us redeem him, baby. That's my Ethereum hot take.
Perfect.
All right, and I think with that, Ethereum hot and spicy episode number 7. Oh yeah, and shout out, we're going to be at Ethereal doing a great little panel conference with ourselves, Kevin Owaki, Rick Burton, and then Sina from the Ethereum Foundation, talking about Ethereum developer growth at 12:30. And Austin, oh, he's going to show up. Great, fantastic. At 12:30,
I hope so.
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Be there or be square. Ethereum hot takes out.